having the duty to also, be responsible for them.
For legal rights, if you're asking legal rights, you're asking for someone to police those rights. You're asking for a state to be.
No, you're asking for a court system. That's what you're asking for.
But you're asking for a continental court system. You're asking for a court system.
In terms of the EU, you're asking for we're talking about parliamentary system. There is a court system linked to it, and it's been very, very useful.
Common law, though, does it use fucking bullshit law? It uses a legal system.
It has its own common law.
It doesn't have the fucking common law.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. America doesn't recognise British common law. Just like British, we wouldn't, like, if I went to court in England for a crime committed in England, and I tried to say to the judge, I don't think this is definable as a crime, and I bring up, the state of Wisconsin versus Jackson, the guy's not going to listen to a single fucking word I've got to say because it's not part of his common law. So just like our common law doesn't apply to everyone in Europe.
Keep talking about this subject because I'm just looking for the European. Wait a second.
Because that's the one thing you got to remember is we're not the only member of Europe. There is every other member to consider as well.
Yeah, but use a different legal system.
Hey Chaz, how you doing, man? Long time.
I'm good, mate. How are you doing? Yeah, not bad, Soccer. Yeah, it has been a long time.
Long.
I saw you popping up in the external chat earlier.
Yeah, Bulldog always adds me to the Beasley stuff because I find it hilarious, so I appreciate it.
I do remember you stupidly getting yourself into the nonsense that is Beasley.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm a bully. What can I say?
Mm.
And a gaslighter now.
Yeah.
Right, ready now. Listen.
Yeah.
Since the United Kingdom joined the European Economic Community, now the European Community, Union in some legal contexts, it has progressively but effectively passed the power to create laws which affect in this country in institutions. In effect, as regards community matters, the United Kingdom's legislative, executive and judicial powers are now controlled by and can only be operated within this framework of the unique European Community law. It's essentially, therefore, in the text that is primarily concerned with, hold on, I need to keep going, go on. I need to find where fucking common law were.
The European court system, because there's several courts. You've got things like the European Court of Human Rights and other European courts. And what that is once you've exhausted your own court system, you can take your thing to another body, and this is great because this body isn't part of the system that you've already been through. So, like for instance, let's say I'm caught shoplifting, yeah, and I try to appeal against the idea of shoplifting even being a crime because that's part of what the court system is. It's there to decide on laws and whether laws still apply, and that's the whole idea of common law. And obviously, common law does affect the statute. And here's the thing: if I try and say, for instance, like let's pick something, let's pick something like cannabis, yeah. Let's say I was caught growing a couple of plants for my own consumption, yeah. Now this goes to a court system here, and that's against the law. And I try and have an appeal that this shouldn't be a system of law, and I get all the way up to the Old Bailey and the Supreme Court system. And it's decided on by people whose decision is going to be basically what creates the law from then on. And I'll be the test case. I will become the part of common law. I'll be part of Regina versus Chazwold. And then what will happen is if I don't win there, I have the right to go. I'm going up to another level of the legal system, and I'm going to argue for my case here. In fact, the reason why we have an equal age of consent for gay men is because of the European Court of Human Rights stepped in where our own court systems failed, where our own legal system failed. Just like, for instance, the Queen is in her position there to step in when our parliamentary system fails. When our parliamentary system passes grotesque laws, the Queen is supposed to be there and have her right to veto. And the reason why we went to a constitutional monarchy was that she was supposed to be there to then be going, I will not have this. This parliamentary system is broken. You know, it's become stagnant. It's my job to dissolve it and we start again. That's supposed to be the role of the Queen. So this is a good thing. You have the system that makes all of the decisions, and then you have a system that can intercede at times when that system may fail to protect people and to uphold what should be the social contract, what should be the moral right, what should be the just. This is the thing.
Moral rights.
What is moral right? As in, what is the morally right thing to do?
There's no moral right.
Are you sure?
Oh, I'm absolutely sure on that one, mate.
You're actually there's nothing. There is nothing considerable as morally right.
Relative to certain communities and individuals, but there's no objective moral right. That's an error. Objective
right.
Moral.
So we're discussing as a community, indeed a society, the moral right, because that's what the law is built on, the idea of what is just and what is fair. That is the principle that our legal system is based on.
We have rights that we have practically important, you know, with certain elements of reason to sort of
things. We make a charter. We make a charter.
Yeah,
that's
but there's no objective rights. There's no true or false.
Yeah, but we're not talking about inherent good and evil or inherent morality. We're talking about what is the moral right in terms of the society. What is the policy that we should have? What is the policy that we should go with? And that's what.
Like if some community had a different right, we couldn't say, "Oh no, you're false." You know? Do you know what I mean? There's no. Do you know what I mean? There's no empirical evidence to sort of say you are wrong, objectively wrong. Just if they're using the same sort of ethical system, then you can sort of say. Because
let's put it this way, right? We can say that you have a moral right to offer the same legal incentives and protections granted to you by a marriage if you're gay as you would if you were straight. You have the moral right at the age of 16 to decide whether you want to have sex with a man, whether or not you're male or female. See, so this is why I'm talking about the moral right. What is morally just? What should be? If we're going to say, like, there isn't such a thing as inherent good and evil, we can make it up as we go along. Yeah. What I'm talking about when I said
why should
be in that contract? What should be in that charter?
Right to marry.
Pardon?
Why should they have the right to marry? Why should gay people have the right to marry? Marriage is a religious ceremony. You know, you shouldn't force that on people.
Actually, not really. There are religious ceremonies that constitute marriage, but marriage isn't a religious ceremony. Marriage is actually a financial contract. between two parties.
No, well, they can have the financial contract, but they can't have the religious ceremony, and it shouldn't be up to the state to decide who's...
You do know that's not actually what the issue was with gay marriage, right?
Actually, I just want to throw one thing in there too as well, is that marriage isn't a strictly religious concept. Marriage has been around in multiple cultures, multiple religions, multiple societies for a very long period of time. It was. I can understand that traditionally in relatively more modern times, and by modern I mean in the last 700-800 years. This is something that's been completely taken over by the church. But that's at a time when the church governed everything. So you could obviously expect the church would take over the government.
A bit more than 700-800 years. I'd say you could take that back.
Yeah,
right.
But that's only because we became very theocratic in society. I mean, typically the people that we're talking to, we all have European descendantry being the sort of pinnacle of our cultures, because you've got Canadians, Australians, and British in here. So
and the point that I was bringing up is that it's at the time that you saw a more kind of a theocracy take over a lot of places in Europe has only been in I guess probably actually closer to like 900 years.
1400.
You
1400 is when
you think 1400. You think 1400 before that? Do you think like that? The pagan culture, the pagan cultures that lived on like the British Isles prior to the Christianity kind of taking control of that region followed religious marriage rights.
1600. Prior to obviously the Holy Roman Empire and the power being held in Rome by the Pope. Because he had the allegiance of all of these kings in these states that were part of the old empire, who used to obviously be beholden to the emperor.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Okay, I'll take your point on that one. But still, I mean, the concept of marriage becoming
before that, there was several different types of ways that people would do the ceremony. Some would have it wasn't necessarily based on an idea of legal contract, but it was more of a celebration of love. It was more just ceremonial than it was anything contractual.
Yeah. So it's a term that was hijacked by religion.
Yeah.
It's like saying
those two ideas of having a legal contract of marriage and having a kind of a ceremonial marriage kind of became joined and became one of the same thing under the Christian idea of marriage, because
it's like saying
marriage that was ratified.
Yeah, it's like saying that the concept of school and education is a Christian concept just because it was an industry that was taken over by religion at about the same time that the nations became ruled by a type of a theocracy. We know that
it was just basically religion took over governments, and it was one particular religion that got its understanding of something recognized, and that became law. So, for instance, like I could get married to my wife dressed as stormtroopers and have, I don't know, fucking Billy Bloggs conduct the ceremony. Yeah, not ordained as any type of minister or anything like that. Yeah. I could do that. I'm free within my rights to do that, but I can't go to the tax man and go married man's tax allowance from doing that. I'd have to go through and this is the reason why the gay marriage debate was going on, because whilst they had access to the legal rights in terms of the civil partnership, i.e. they could have a contract with the government for their marriage, they couldn't divorce without paying, because it was a governmental contract of marriage. So having the same rights as Christians do with marriage, because if you get married in a church, your contract is with God and with the church, not the state. So you don't have to pay the state's divorce fees, and they don't really have a say in whether that marriage can be annulled or not, technically. I mean, obviously, our court system's changed, and so you can go to a state to dissolve a marriage, and that's typically what's done. Churches don't dissolve marriages themselves now, but they used to. Used to be an entirely religious affair to get divorced. You'd have to go to the church, not to the government.
Yeah, my wife and I are married. We didn't do it in a church, and we didn't do it under any type of church authority. It was done strictly with the government. That's it.
Yeah, the government.
Right, I've got the law, the EU law, if you want. The actual EU law, and you can follow along with me if you want. I'll post it in the chat, and you can have a little read along with me. Where's the chat? How do I go to the chat?
It's on the left-hand side. You'll see a little speech bubble window. Click that, and that will bring up a bar.
Give me a second. I need to find the specific.
Yeah, all the European Commission it's kind of like our crown entity, yeah, whereby obviously the crown entity is what signs it into the statute, and then technically is also what sets the agenda for Parliament. The Commission fulfills the same sort of role. But it would be like, for instance, if MPs wanted to, it would be like if MPs in the British Parliament wanted to bring something up, they'd have to go to the crown entity and say, can you put this on the agenda for discussion? And obviously that proposal would be considered along with all the other proposals that have been brought up by all of the MEPs in the Parliament. Because even our Parliament does the same thing. Because of, funnily enough, a lot of what goes on in the EU Parliament was based on our parliamentary system.
Yeah, but the council's not legally obligated to listen to the MEPs, though, are they?
What do you mean legally obligated to listen to them? They have to consider all the proposals.
They don't. No, yes, they can consider it, but they're not legally obligated to listen to Parliament, that's all.
Well, why should they be? Should they just be there to rubber stamp through everything an MEP wants to get through? And it should be a first come, first served basis, and not what's most important to the discussion.
Even if all of European Parliament and majority opinion on an issue, Council is not legally obligated to take account of Parliament's opinion.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's obligated by the. Hold on. It's obligated by the very fact. If you let me finish, it's obligated by the very fact that if it's obligated by the fact that if a commission doesn't listen to the majority rule of Parliament, then the majority rule of that Parliament could force the commission to resign, which we already discussed.
I'm talking about the council, not the commission.
The EU Council.
So, we'll talk about the commission in a minute, man.
We were talking about the commission before. That's what you were getting all hoity and toity about.
No, we're gonna do this properly, man. We're gonna talk about the council, commission, chief commissioner. Come on, man. We're gonna do this properly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, we've already done the commission. I don't know what you're going to bring up different.
No, we didn't do that, but I'll let you pretend we did, but we'll do that later, okay? Right. The European Parliament may approve or reject a legislative proposal. To it. The Council is not legally obligated to take the account of Parliament's opinion. It must not take a decision without receiving it. So that's nice. The Council just has to wait until it hears from Parliament's opinion to listen to anything that he says.
So you want to talk about the European Council, yeah, which is just defines the overall political direction and priorities.
No. That's not. That's you're talking about commission.
That's what the Council does. The commission is what. The commission is what tables the agenda of Parliament, and what the council does, the council just decides sort of what direction the commission should be going in.
Who is the council?
What you mean, the members of it, heads of state or government of the 28 EU member states, the European Council President and the presidents of the European Commission. That's what the European Council is. It's a big group of people who decide what the Commission, how the Commission should be going. So it's a group of people from all the EU member states.
Well,
yeah,
that's not true.
From the 28 main EU member states. Yeah, so we have a representative that's part of the council, and they discuss with the other members of the council and the president of the Commission, and they decide the strategic agenda and direction that things should be going. This helps the Commission decide how it's going to agenda Parliament, obviously, and then the Parliament debates on things. That's how the system goes. So the Council is just there as to be the thing that defines what the Commission does, and then the Commission acts out of what the European Council says. And if the Commission isn't doing what it should be doing, then the MEPs can force it to resign. And then this will then involve the European Council, obviously, having to set the agenda for the Commission, and obviously the new Commission be elected. Funnily enough, elected by people that we elect. We don't elect every single branch of our government, do we? And there's a reason why. We elect only the bits that are important. I don't see what you're trying to turn the EU Council in, to try and make the EU sound like some sort of, you know, conspiracy theory level type Illuminati that's somehow out to harm Britain or be bad for British interests. No, things like, you have to put a flame retardant label on things. Oh my God, no.
Am I allowed to talk?
You are, but I'm still talking
at the moment. Please. I was just about
can I finish? Can I finish what I was saying?
I had something interesting to say, but apparently not. Okay, go ahead.
Well, you can say your interesting thing when I had finished talking. I find it highly questionable that what you're trying to do is you're trying to interrupt me and say you're not getting the chance to speak when you're actually interrupting somebody. No, go ahead. I'm sure what you've got to say is so very important, because everything else has been absolutely important. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. What
you are.
Really?
The way you're trying to present the EU, the Commission, you've outright said the Commission doesn't do this, the Commission doesn't do that. It's like, oh, actually, it does. The Council doesn't do this. Oh, wait, except the Council does. And it's just like...
No, I'm reading the exact law.
Yeah, what is the point of the EU Council? Let's establish that first. What does the EU Council actually do? Who constitutes the EU Council?
The EU Council is made up of the member states, and they approve
the member states and the president of the Commission. Okay. Pardon? They propose
the Commission.
Yeah, the Commission. I'm talking about the Council. We're talking about the Council, remember?
Council approve or amend law, just like the Parliament do.
No, the Council decides the direction that the
the Commission.
No, the Commission tables the agenda. Yeah, right. They define the overall political direction and priorities. It is not one of the legislating institutions, so it does not negotiate or adopt
the president of the EU Commission does not.
Instead, it sets the EU policy agenda traditionally by adopting conclusions during European Council meetings, which identify issues of concern and actions to take.
They determine the Commission's policy agenda and legislative.
Yes, more recently, the EU Council adopted a strategic agenda of priority areas for long-term EU actions and focus. So the EU Council just goes, this is I'm just going to explain it to you very simply. The EU Council goes, right, as the EU, this is where we should be going. The EU Commission goes, right, we'll take in all the proposals and set the parliamentary agenda based on that.
Who sets the parliamentary agenda again?
The Commission.
Okay. What does the Chief Commissioner do? The President of the European Commission, what does he do?
Well, his job is to run that branch. He's responsible.
Does he determine what the Commission's policy agenda is?
No, that's decided for by the Council.
What?
That's exactly what goes on.
Right now.
That's exactly what goes on. That's exactly what these things are. The Council decides, as the EU, this is the things that we need to do. This is the sort of political areas that we need to be in. This is the things that we need to set in motion for long-term plans. These are the areas of concern. These are the things that we need to address. And then the Commission goes, right, so we know the list of things we've got to address, and they take in any proposals, and obviously proposals that are in line with these things will obviously gain greater priority, i.e. are more likely to be debated on by the European Parliament. The people who will decide, the European Parliament, what will be the outcomes of the proposal of those actions are people who you democratically elect, as does every member state. That is the system. You're trying to call something which is more democratically correct than the system that you want to give more power back to. The government that you elect is less representative, less democratically representative of the masses than the EU Parliament, because it's not an first past the post system with the European Parliament. It is proportional representation. So if we as a nation decide we support the green way of thinking, we can elect more green MEPs, or we can elect more
we have a
green
click on that one.
MPs.
We'll talk about the President of the Commission. We'll see what he does.
Okay, is this going to be another one where you try and right? Go on then. Let's hear how you're going to frame this.
The President is the head of the European Commission. According to treaties, he decides the organisation of the Commission, allocates portfolios to the members of the Commission, and can make changes at any time. Also,
changes to what? Changes to what?
He can make changes to anything at any time. The portfolios to the members.
Yes, he can make changes to the Commission at any time. The president of the president of the European Commission is a member of the European Council, by the way. So he has a say in the European Council, which is why it was important that we discussed the European Council. So he's a member of the European Council as well, and he runs the branch of the European Commission. As the head of it, he makes changes. He's got executive power in that branch. So he elects the members of the Commission, and he can unselect the members at any time. So he can go, right, this is the panel of people, and it's him who has the ability to fire one of those commissioners if they're not doing their jobs or if there's a scandal.
Okay, but
he's almost like he's the chief whip. That's what he is. He's essentially almost like a chief whip.
He decides what the policy agenda is. He can make changes at any time. He can fire people at any time.
I'm sorry, you're actually being dishonest there, because he can make changes at any time is talking about the members of the Commission, right? Which he should have. Do you know what it means by allocate portfolios to members?
Yeah, and he can make changes at any time.
Yes, of course he can do.
The Commission's policy agenda.
No, the policy agenda is a different sentence. It's actually after changes at any time. So you're actually being intellectually dishonest by trying to put them two together. What it's saying is that he sets who is the Commission. So he's the head commissioner, and he decides the Commission. He overrules all of the commissioners, He is he's like the CEO. He's the head chairman. He's the chief executive officer of the European Commission, right?
So these people who represent us, they're not democratic. Then he decides who's there, so he can fire them, but not us. Is that what you're saying?
He can fire members of the Commission. Like for instance,
so they're not. So they don't.
Hold on. Just like for instance, David Cameron, as head of the Conservative Party, can remove cabinet members. Yeah, think of the Commission like a cabinet. Yeah, so you have your commissioners, and then you have your head commissioner who sits above all of these people. Yeah. So he's like the CEO of this board, and he has all of the other commissioners there. He can change who those commissioners are at any time as being the head of that department.
How do you get rid of Juncker then? How do we get rid of the president of the commission?
The MEPs put in a vote of no confidence.
No, that's not strictly true, is it?
No, that is strictly true. We went over that a second ago.
Not.
Well, it is. Do we have to read what happened in 1999 again when the MEP Parliament pushed the Commission to resign?
It didn't happen though. I wonder why it didn't happen.
It did happen because the Commission resigned. Did the Commission resign? Yes or no? Did the Commission resign? Yes or no?
It wasn't removed though, was it?
It didn't have to be removed. It left. They said, look, if you don't leave, we'll remove you. They said, okay, we'll leave. It was a quit or be fired, and they chose to quit. If they hadn't chose to quit, they would have been fired.
Would they? It's never happened before, so how do you know?
Because that's exactly the reason why they resigned. Was because if they didn't resign, then the Parliament was going to vote and push them into resignation. So they took resignation before being given the only option to resign. So they chose to resign before they were forced to choose to resign. And that's it. This system, that is the system. It was a perfectly democratic system. The only thing it wasn't perfectly democratic for was certain zealots who want to push their own agendas.
What you mean, lefties like yourself?
No, lefties don't push agendas. We have democracy. I'm not talking about lefties or righties. I'm talking about certain groups of individuals, certain interests, certain demographics. Everything's not about parties, and it's not a left versus right wing fuckwit.
Can you remember what Juncker said about lobbying? What was his? What can you remember what he said about lobbying?
Do you have a problem with lobbying?
Is he all right with lobbying or not with it? Is it encouraged in the EU?
What, lobbying the EU?
Lobbying's encouraged, isn't it?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with lobbying.
Oh, of course. So you're represented then, aren't you? If you have a proposal in the EU and you're just a poor peasant, then you don't mind if there's some big corporation who lobbies against you, do you? You're all right with that.
You do know that the system of lobbying, when you put in a petition, you are lobbying the government. You do know that, don't you? That's where the term comes from. What you're using the definition of lobbying, which is more of a colloquial term, to mean somebody whose job it is to basically be a government liaison to try and influence policy. Yeah. And they do this by using the practice of lobbying a government. You do know lobbying doesn't mean just the thing that you're trying to make it mean. Lobbying has a term, and if you wanted to get rid of that type of lobbying, you'd actually be getting rid of some of your democratic rights. What do you think lobbying means?
Give me a second, I've got to read something to you. Won't be long. Because you're using a literal interpretation of a word instead of what I meant.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I not say that there is the colloquial definition of lobbying, and then there's where that colloquial definition comes from, which is actually a legal term? Did you not have that? Do you have a problem with that? Like, what do you think lobbying means?
You're supposed to be using the principle of charity. You're supposed to be. It's obvious that I meant that in the sense of like big business lobbying.
Right. Okay. I'm going to explain something to you. Under the freedom of our country, the democraticness of it, I have the right to try and influence my government's decisions in a multitude of ways.
Yeah, but you don't have a special area. There isn't a special area in Parliament where you can,
like the House of Commons.
Yeah, but big business is not actively encouraged to lobby.
Well, this is the thing. I, as an individual, if you let me finish, okay, you've had your say. Remember, you said you wanted me to have a say and you to have a say. Well, now just let me have my say, right? Under I have that ability to lobby, to influence my government, to speak truth at. That's what lobbying means, okay? So I have the ability to influence my government through my democratic vote. And as part of that, I have the right to make suggestions to the Parliamentary Commission or through my MEP. So my MEP can contact the Parliamentary Commission. If I want to bypass my MEP, I can have a petition, and I can use a petition to lobby government to have my influences known. That's what lobbying means. Now, companies can lobby governments very, very effectively because they're bigger organizations. These things have the ability the individual who has these organizations has the ability to bully them. It's like if I said that I speak for 6 million people, if I said I automatically speak for 6 million people as part of, say, a church or as part of, say, an organization or institution, then obviously everything I say carries the weight of 6 million people. So I'm going to be able to be heard first. It is a very unfair system whereby, big business can get its foot in the door better than you can. And unfortunately, that often leads to a lot of smaller people who might have very, very legitimate concerns wouldn't be able to do it. But you're going to get this type of lobbying all the time. The only way you could stop it would be to remove my democratic right to influence my government.
Actively encouraged by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister's not out and about saying this is something.
Sorry?
But in the EU, especially Juncker has openly said with this type of lobbying, he's fine with it.
What, you think our government isn't fine with lobbying? It goes on all the time. Conservative UK.
No, are they? They're not open about it. They're not on TV saying they're fine with it. I can't show you that YouTube video. It's in French, man. You've got the time. You can
actually go and je parle un petit peu de français.
Oh, we'll find it.
Parlez-vous en français?
Juncker. I speak French, man.
But yes.
From the President of the European Commission.
Yeah, he has no problem with the lobbying. He said it openly. Your government have said they don't mind lobbying. Theresa May is a fucking lobby. Theresa May was Home Secretary and her husband happens to be a major shareholder of G4S Security. Please remind me, what do G4S Security want? What do G4S Security do? What would be financially beneficial to G4S?
Associated with someone who's a security company, however, doesn't mean that she's going to be influenced by him, does it? She hasn't actively said that she's influenced by him, actually.
Except G4S in her time when she was Home Secretary actually gained huge amounts of contracts, and under the Tory government's austerity program and typical neoliberalist cuts top-down economics type thing, then yes, she was. She had to sell the police off. She had to try and privatize as much of the police force and the legal system as she could, and it was very, very handy for her. She knew exactly who to give those contracts to. It would be like me being the Minister for Refuge, yeah, waste management, and my partner just happens to be a major shareholder or an owner of a company that does waste management. Well, I wonder where the contracts are going to go there.
Contracts. Maybe they're the best company for those contracts.
Really, because their history doesn't say so. Their history in the prisons speaks a difference to that.
Well, the point is that there's no reason to believe just because she's in a relationship with someone that she's, giving them favors, special favors. There's no reason to believe that, is there?
I don't know where you're getting your revision of like the political realm from, but I suggest you might broaden your sources.
Accusation of someone that just because she's in a relationship with them that she's giving them special favors. What reason do you have to believe that? Okay,
here's one for you. The major conservative cabinet all have huge financial ties to private healthcare. They're in charge of the NHS. What do we see? A major top-down revision. We also see the sale of the Royal Mail at a time when it's turning a profit for $1 billion less than it's worth during a time of austerity. Who was it sold to? Oh, that's right. It was sold to one of George Osborne's friends. Funny that.
No, don't need state provisions. We don't need this sort of nonsense.
We don't need state provisions. We don't need state provision. What state provisions don't we need?
What? It's one word actually. We don't need any state services. We don't need the NHS. We don't need the Royal Mail.
Why don't we need the NHS? Hold on. Why don't we need the NHS? What would you propose instead of the NHS?
Private health.
Pardon?
That's what we should have.
A what? Private healthcare. Why private healthcare?
Because the state. I don't see the reason why I should fucking need to provide a
No, come on. What's so good? What's so good about private healthcare compared to state healthcare?
They shouldn't be forced to provide a healthcare system for other people.
Sorry.
Market capitalism can.
No. I don't think you're understanding the question that's been asked of you, right? You say you don't need a state provision of health, and I'm saying, well, what do you propose instead? And you say private healthcare, and I'm asking you, what can private healthcare do that state healthcare can't?
It can encourage competition among encourage competition.
Okay, and what would be so good about competition? What would be?
Doctors get paid more. The best
better services.
Okay,
and how would these companies get better doctors and better services?
Well, I don't know, by competition. They'll have to compete.
But by competition. So they'll have to compete. But how does a company actually do that competing? How would it have the better doctors and it would have the better medical system? It would be the cleanest, best hospital. How would that competition create that?
How would a competition create better hospitals?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I understand what you're trying to say. I understand what you're trying to say. That obviously, profit incentivizes competition. It incentivizes capitalizing. So you're saying obviously for that to necessarily exist, that obviously you'd need some sort of financial incentive for it to exist. Okay, but you see the thing is, how does say Bupa Healthcare become the one with the more affordable, better, cheaper hospitals? How is it that it's going to be the cheapest and ensure that it has the best staff and the best equipment? How does the company make sure it will always be the one with the best equipment and the best procedures? How would it do that?
Well, you can't expect the state to be in charge of it's. It's not going to run the company efficiently enough. It's. Why
wouldn't it? If a businessman can do it, why can't a state do it? A state's doing all of the same transactions as the private sector is.
I'll tell you why. Wrong. I'll tell you why. When you put state in charge of a service, it's not interested in fixing the problem. It's interested in getting a bigger budget. And the way it gets a bigger budget is by making the problem worse.
No, not quite. You're kind of close to it in the fact that obviously what can typically happen with state-run programs is they get mismanaged, and often that they'll get mismanaged because hold on, I'm speaking. They'll often get mismanaged because the people who are in charge of them have a vested interest in mismanaging those systems, in underfunding those systems. Yeah. For instance. Right, the only problems that there is with the NHS is actually due to the fact that it's been underfunded by the government, and then the government has been doing this underfunding so that it can get away with these privatizations.
Which is a good thing.
And if you want to try and say that that's conspiracy theory, then why has Jeremy Hunt co-authored papers, funny enough, the person who's health minister, on how to privatize the NHS?
It's a good thing. We need to privatize.
No, it's not a good thing. Right, okay, let's just have a look. A big picture perspective, right? You've got a system where you've got a group of individuals, us as citizens, who need to have a healthcare system provided for it, yeah?
They'll have to work for it then, won't they?
Hold on, right, okay. This healthcare system will have a base cost, i.e. the cost of maintaining and expanding the buildings to keep up with the population, to have enough MRI machines available for how many MRIs that people are going to need, to have enough X-rays for how enough people are going to need. Yeah, that's what needs to happen in and of itself, right? Okay, so you can fund that by having a insurance contract. Now, insurance comes from turf accountancy. It's betting, it's gambling. Okay, so what your national insurance policy really is about is you pay a small amount, as we all do, okay, which is like our premium, to the government. Okay, they take that premium, okay, and they put it in with all of the other premiums to be what supplies that cost, yeah, to staff doctors, to train doctors, to build hospitals, to have cleaning staff and nurses and all of these things, yeah. And that system, hold on, that system's funding would be guaranteed on the idea that more people would be paying in than would need to use it, okay? So I would be betting the government that I would need to use healthcare, and they're betting me that I won't. What you're trying to say is instead of doing that system, we should have a macabre of middlemen, yeah, who need to make a profit. So we're already going to have to increase the necessary cost because you're going to have a third party who's also then going to need to make a profit rather than just to, fund their service, okay? And then what's going to happen is you're going to have a bunch of corrupt people who can jack up the prices extra in order to make shareholders happy and increase their share prices. Okay, and then what we have is the system that America currently has, whereby healthcare costs more. People are actually avoiding getting healthcare. There are lots of people who there's been studies done right? There are lots of people who become infirm in America who would not become infirm had they have had access to medical health. They don't have access to medical health because it's so damned expensive.
It's not obligated to keep you alive.
Well, it kind of is. The state is obligated to keep you alive because you being there producing things is what keeps it going. You do know that government doesn't exist without people to govern. You do know people won't invest in a country that's got a collapsing death rate.
Then you should work and then pay for your own healthcare. And if you can't afford it, then tough shit.
You should work and then pay for your own healthcare. That's exactly what goes on with the NHS. But the thing is, because we do it this system, it means it's actually cheaper for us to fund a system because we don't have a bunch of health providers that the people who would like have the hospitals, who would obviously they'd make their money from the insurance person who makes their money out of you, doing the exact same system of money making as the government would be doing. So you want to just do the exact same thing we do, but you just want to add more and more different bodies into the mix. Correct. Where you're going to create a lot more waste and a lot more cost. Whereas the UK, because we're a single payer, when we go to buy things from Philips, we're not buying 15 MRIs, we're buying 1,500, and we're buying, the services. The UK government, the NHS, is a big client to Siemens and Philips. And Siemens would want to win our contract for our MRI machines over Philips. So we obviously get a good negotiating rate, certainly a lot better than these individual companies would with Seaman or Philips. Okay, so it actually saves us some money there. We have a system that knows it's always supported, so it doesn't need to worry about, building up a deficit or not gaining as much of a surplus, because this is what a company would have to do. It'd be worried about its profits, because every year it has to make a profit, and every year it has to seem to be making a growth of profit, because if a company isn't making a growth of profit, its share price won't go up. So the company is actually incentivized to drive up costs to protect itself, much like a supermarket, right? The supermarket makes its money back on 1 carton of eggs as it does for that whole fucking pallet of eggs that are in the store, right? 1 carton, pretty much, and that pays for all of the eggs that are in that carton, so that it knows that even if it only sells a small amount, it obviously reaps its costs.
Sell the NHS off to another company and they can have a monopoly on that company. Don't need the state to have a monopoly on that company.
But then the monopoly company will just keep driving up prices. And it won't be incentivized to compete. What you've just suggested is even worse than what you're trying to suggest before. You're trying to suggest too many people involved go creating too much waste, or you're trying to suggest rather than the government having the monopoly on it, we give it to a private institution so it can just have more waste and no competition. I mean, that's obviously wrong. The NHS is a good system. Even Maggie Thatcher knew that. Maggie Thatcher famously said that the NHS is one of the greatest things the government ever did. Do you know which government did the NHS? Labour.
What you need. That's long indeed.
So yeah.
Yeah, but I can agree with you that the NHS is a good system, but the point is that
it's the best way to do that system. Look, right? I'm not saying everything should be in the state's hands. Yeah.
No.
I'm not saying everything should be public interest. I'm saying that when it comes to the provision of we have a group of people in society, and we have certain needs that society needs met. Yeah. in order to keep it productive and to keep it growing so it can sustain itself.
Yeah, but if you get two of
there
them,
are certain things. There are certain things that the provision of works better, is cheaper and more affordable under a single monopoly system held by the public, so it's accountable to the public, rather than in the hands of a free market. Some things are very beneficial in a free market, in an open exchange, because the competition helps, obviously, stimulate some of that growth. It encourages people to be better. Like, for instance, McDonald's has a moral quandary many years ago. Does it keep on providing the service that it does and raise the cost to meet inflation? Or does it change its recipe and its menu and its procedures so that it's cheaper and thereby the prices don't change as much as with inflation? Because I don't know if you've ever been to a Five Guys Burgers and Fries. They don't do a £5 meal deal there. You pay about £5 for your burger, £5 for your fries, and £5 for your fucking milkshake, yeah? So that's what McDonald's would charge you if it still made good old-fashioned milkshake with ice cream and milk, like Five Guys does, if it's still cooked with freshly handmade patties of meat, like Five Guys does, if it still offered you all of the ways to dress your burgers. Obviously, you know, it used to have a couple of common ones, the common sort of dress-ups, but obviously you could ask for it to come how you'd like, if it was to have that system and stay the exact same way as it was, as Five Guys has tried to sort of, you know, do that in the modern era, it would have to be way more expensive. So it has a choice. It has a choice of, you know, creating these new systems, and it is great. Bars, things like that, they always have to find new ways of creating, you know, profits, and it helps people create very, very waste management sufficient things, like in kitchens, right? In food production, this is something that's very, very critical. In food production, there are many ways that you can make food very, very cost effective. For instance, if you run a restaurant and you have mashed potatoes on the thing, rather than peeling the potatoes and just throwing that skin in the bin, you can deep fry that skin, or saute it in salt and offer it as a bar snack, You can just, rather than doing that, because you're doing mash, you can take the potatoes, you can make them into jackets, You could then scoop out you could cut them in half, scoop them out, fill that skin with cheese and onion, bung that in the oven for a couple more minutes. You got yourself some cheese and onion potato skins, and not on top of that, you've still got the mashed potato for the pie and mash dish. So you can use one potato to do a pie and mash, Okay, let's be reasonable. You can take 2 or 3 potatoes, 2 or 3 nice big King Edwards, to do the pie and mash main and the potato skin side. And there you are, you can charge the customer a bit more money. What you're essentially doing is selling them shit you'd throw in the bin. So it is a good system. I'm not anti-capitalist,
No,
I'm a realist. I'm a realist in the sense that some systems can benefit in this system and some systems can't.
Right. Okay. With the
medical
research, I was just being a dick, just for the sake of it. Okay. I'm actually in favour of the NHS, and I'm not actually a fucking like an uncapitalist.
No, look, mate, I don't have anything against you, even if you were, right? I'm not that type of person. I'm enjoying this discussion. I really am, because of nothing is lost through arguing. You might learn something, I might learn something, I might not have been as critical as I need to of the things that I believe in necessarily, and though thereby talking to you, taking in your perspective, hearing how you see things, I can benefit myself, mate. So I'm not angry. I'm not in a bad mood, mate. I'm smoking a fucking joint right now. All right. I am chemically incapable of being angry or hating anyone right now. Okay. So
I've got going.
It was a very interesting conversation, and I don't know if you see things the way that I do. That the majority of things maybe are very good under capitalism, and it's the best way for, in some ways, some of the resource management. But in certain areas, there's certain resources which need to be managed in a particular way, and we can't leave it up to this tussle-top system.
No. If you with capitalism, it focuses too much on the individual. It goes to a point where the community is lost. You know what I mean? If you
where the community suffers, yeah. Where sometimes the needs of the many have to outweigh the needs of the few or the one.
Yeah, this is why, and I was talking about this the other day. This is why I think religion, although I'm not religious, it is very good at bringing the community together. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, well, Marx classically said religion is the opiate of the masses.
Yeah, it's like,
and that the role of religion inside, particularly a capitalist market, was to distract people from their oppression, to distract the working classes from their oppression, and even sort of make them enjoy that oppression. Much like if you're going through a difficult situation, taking opium would make you feel better about the situation that you're in. Yeah. It's like certain drugs, they don't actually get rid of the pain, they just make you forget that you're in pain.
A lot of people are religious because it's not really that they believe in God, it's the fact that
it's the community thing. That's what gives them the reward chemical. And actually, there is a benefit to that community presence.
Definitely.
Human beings, we need to be around other people because we do need to communicate.
It's not just survival of the fittest.
Well, yeah, we need to communicate disease because, funnily enough, obviously we'll share diseases, but we'll also share immunities amongst ourselves. Yeah. And there's chemical changes that go on from actually spending physical contact and time with somebody, then you can replicate truly with an artificial form of interaction. And
that's what I'm worried about is how are we going to replace that community? You know, because it's sort of been lost. I think. I don't see it.
We've become way more insular, and I think it's why we're getting a lot of this divisive politics doing so well. I mean, we have our home. We have homes filled with nice things. I've got a sofa. I've got a big screen TV. I've got a computer. I've got an internet connection. You know, why the fuck do I have to leave my house? Right, your options are I can sit here, smoke a joint, and play Skyrim on my high-def LED 53-inch television, yeah, whilst talking to you pricks and having a great time, getting fucking high. Or I can, go and stand around with a bunch of wankers I don't know or really like, who I don't really have the option to switch off from. Like, if you guys annoy me, that I've got an easy out. I can just fuck off. The second I turn the computer off, I've forgotten about you. You know, the second I click close on that, the second I click that little red phone, you no longer exist. Yeah, you are temporal beings. Yeah, like when I'm at work, I'm not thinking about Rob Beasley or Sydney or going, do you know what? I really fancy talking to John May. No, I'm simply going, I'm doing my job, you know, blah, 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 blah. The only thing I might think is I might go on Hangouts later. Yeah. If I'm really, really bored, like let's say I was at work and there was nothing going on and I was really fucking bored, like I might entertain the thought somewhere closer to my sort of frontal cortex of, I enjoyed that hangout with Sydney, or I wonder if Sid's got a hang going tonight. Yeah, might join a hang tonight. You know what? I fancy talking to Sydney more than anybody else at the moment. Right? That would be about the level of thought. I don't sort of have a loving connection. Yeah, it's not like I have with my wife where I think about, like, when she's not there, I think about stuff to do with my wife. I don't think about stuff to do with you people when you're not there. That would show the inherent difference. And because of that, we do become slightly more detached from each other, and we become slightly more hostile towards each other because we have that detachment. And so, yes, there is
some sort of institution that brings people, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, yeah, this is the thing. When the socialist revolution happened, yeah, it was very, very atheistically driven, because it wanted to smash religion as the opiate of the masses and free the people from the enslavement of religion. But people need that community thing, and people will replace religion with anything else, whether it be pop music or fashion, whether it be a music trend or a fashion trend or some sort of music and fashion trend and some sort of, you know, group of people, and it comes with all of the sort of pre-programmed responses. It's like, for instance, you have an option in life, yeah? You can go through and you can customize your character as you want, yeah? You can put, like Skyrim. I don't know if have you ever played Skyrim?
Yeah, I've played the fuck out of Skyrim.
Yeah, so you know, like at the beginning, you've got like all of those races, and you can customize them to look how you like. Yeah, right. You can be the type of person who does that, or you can be the type of person who goes along and goes for one of these already pre-programmed looks, with all of the armor decided, the weaponry decided, the backstory decided. You know, and that is what people will seek. So it will be a football team if it's not a religion. It will be a political party or a political identity rather than a religion. It will be maybe a political ideology like feminism if it's not a religion. It will be a kind of spiritualism like paganism if it's not
conspiracy theories.
It's conspiracy theories, yeah.
There's like a community of them, isn't there?
Oh, of course. I mean, the problem is, though, that there is just about enough in our government that is legitimately that fucked up and corrupt, yeah? These people sometimes try and make more things than are actually there. But, you know, there is some parts where there is some legitimate truth to some of the conspiracy stuff.
I don't know if you heard about fucking Hillary Clinton's spirit cookie. Did you hear about that? I thought that was
Hillary Clinton's spirit cookie.
I thought it was complete bullshit. Legit.
I'm sorry, it was spirit cookie.
Spirit cooking. She like I first saw this. I first saw that link and I thought, oh, that's bollocks. That's just some Infowars bullshit. But yeah, it's fucking legit. She did some like weird voodoo shit. What are you doing? You know what I mean?
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
But she's like,
it's like any other form of wizardry. It's imaginary, yeah. Like for instance, if I, you know, apparently, if I say some special incantation over my dinner before I eat it, it's somehow not going to poison me, or it will be better for me. And this is no different than when you have people talk about, you know, like for instance, organic freaks and sort of these different types of fatty health nuts, and these people who follow these kind of woo-woo conspiracy theorists types. You know, people like Green Med Info, right? These types of people, like all of this sort of stuff, it becomes something to fill the void. If it's not religion, then something like that. We all like to have our strange beliefs.
Everyone's got some. You need to be part of the group, don't you? You just have to have a fucking...
They're created by the very foundations of what make your brain work the way it does. And the only way you wouldn't have that is if you had some sort of brain damage or malformation.
Is it all electrochemical hormones? Do you believe in love?
Love,
yes, it's called oxytocin.
Oh, is that all it is? The love for your wee little one. It's just a bunch of fucking brain chemicals.
Yeah, but it's an oxytocinal release.
Of course it is. Of course.
But if you want to talk about the qualia, that's just a mental projection onto that chemical reaction you call love.
Yes.
Hope to be found. That's just what you label that. Whatever is causing
you create the understanding that you have of the oxytocin, the interactions that are created by the oxytocin basically manifest themselves almost like a metaphor in the concepts that you know of as love. And the different levels of oxytocinal release that you have denote the different relationships that you have. There's actually been proven there's actually been proven by science things to do with like eye contact.
Objective science.
Actually,
well, if you tell me, Chaz, that you love me, I'm going to believe it to be something more than that. Than just a fucking hormone squirt in some brain out there.
Basically, do you know what, mate? You press my buttons, yeah, and a little squeak of oxytocin comes out, where I find you a charming and enjoyable character, sometimes frustrating and annoying, but always a delight to be around.
Thank you. That's quite kind.
And because of that, like the rat with the fucking electrodes in its brain, hooked up to give it an orgasm, I will sometimes happily press that button until it kills me.
Well, don't be an optimist, please, Chaz. Please, don't be a delusional optimist by all means. Don't overesteem that squirt in your brain, I mean. Left hemisphere.
What? It's an amazing process.
Don't overestimate.
Think of this: an arrangement of electrons, protons, and neutrons. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Connected together to different structures of electrons, protons, and neutrons. To different some things which are gaseous, some things which are liquid and fluidic, and some things which are solid. Yeah, all like made up of the basic same elements, can do all of this millions of stuff. If there is anything that is truly a miracle or magic in the world, it's just how basic all this completely complex stuff is.
What, life? Life is a miracle? Oh my gosh, what a profundity. Yes.
To a degree, yes.
You think?
Especially when you can look at what life is. It's nothing more.
Statement there, buddy. That's a pretty woo statement. But look, Chaz, I'm in a kind of a surly, nasty mood. And you don't
Why are you in a surly, nasty mood?
I have my reasons are my own and I'm minding them. But my point is, you don't need it. You don't need me busting on
Someone's upset you, have they?
Well, I don't know. It's my left hemisphere acting up a little bit. But again, you don't need me fucking.
Perhaps maybe you're not getting enough, or you're perhaps getting too much sugar. You could actually be suffering from.
That's what I need. I need to get laid, man. That would help. Oh yeah.
Well, I tell you what's even better than that. What you need to do is just is hook up some electrodes to your brain, yeah, with a little button, and you can just press the button, and you'll give yourself the greatest orgasm ever.
Well, I don't know. Maybe your sister will do instead of all that. That sounds expensive.
You're free to go there, mate.
Brain. How much is your sister? She's bad to be. I'm sorry. See, there goes my surly joke.
Well, I don't know if you can afford it. What with our currency still being stronger than yours, but there you
go. I imagine I could not. I imagine that
respect thy Britannic masters. Subject.
She's worth probably a fortune, more money than it's all in the world. Yes, and I didn't mean to talk.
I don't know. Every woman has her price.
Hey, man, for $1,000,
the entire Constitution
be there.
Based on a transactional of sex for something. Our entire courtship is based on prostitution to a degree.
Don't tell your daughter that, please.
Oh no, I'm going to.
Oh, okay.
Purely simply in the context of that our species, as any other sexual species, they have a role for the male and a role for the female. The female obviously provides sex for the male in order to become pregnant and reproduce, yeah, and for that the male provides protection or feeds her or provides for her in some ways. So that, you know, the woman trades sex for something back, and it's the same even in our species.
Oh, well, now I know. It sounds like you have all of objective reality figured right out. You know,
I wouldn't say I have it all figured out, but I've got a chunk of it figured out.
The meaning of life and all that is figured right out. Objectively.
No, I think I've got it more figured out than some people, but
that's cool. I'm down.
I think some people will play dishonest games because they may not want to accept.
Oh, hell,
what I'm saying is essentially the true way of looking at things.
Yeah, yes, self-delusion.
I can completely back up all the claims that I've made.
No.
Such a wondrously sophomoric inquiry. I do love them so. How do you know that you know that you know? In every fiber of your being. That's
well, I mean,
how do I know? Because the complex chemical interactions that happen that make my brain function the way it does allows me to understand concepts. And because I can understand concepts, I can set up a completely objective system to measure. I can put those things against a measure, and they either measure up or they do not.
Allow me to introduce you to...
Do you use induction to measure?
Allow me to, excuse me for over talking, but allow me to introduce you to the wondrous word surmise. Welcome to surmise. And by the way, you're welcome.
Measure. Do you use induction to? Do you use induction to measure?
You can induction is you can use a measure. You can you can do that, but it's not necessarily so.
It's not so.
You use well, no. If you have a measure, this is the whole thing. An axiom is true irrespective of me. Yeah. An axiom is something which is self-evident, right? So if something is axiomatic, it must be self-evident. So therefore, it must be true.
That's deduction. That's deduction, though. I'm talking about induction. Anything about the future, can you?
Pardon?
You can't.
I can't say anything about the future. Well, there is a paradox people say when it comes to foretelling the future. The whole thing of what's sometimes called as the Oedipus paradox. That by knowing the future, you influence it. And I don't know if anybody in here is a Whovian, because this is a subject I've actually been discussing quite a bit with my lovely wife. Ooh. Because of recently, I've watched a couple of the old Who's back in the day when they were on the telly, but I was never a big fan of it, never really got into watching it. And I saw when it came back, but I just never really watched it. And so my wife and I were looking for something to watch, and we said, do you know what? We might watch all of the Doctor Who's. Yeah, from the Christopher Eccleston onwards. Yeah. And so I've watched all of them up to date now. And we were pondering something. The Doctor, I think the Doctor technically knows everything. Yeah. Now, I know this sometimes can create a paradox, but I think essentially he knows all outcomes that could possibly ever come in. Yeah. He knows from the situation that is this cause what all possible effects might be. Yeah.
2 + 2 is 4.
And once he commits, to one particular effect, that is what time is, and that this paradox is actually maintained by the TARDIS.
And because if you could,
I can predict the future. I'm going to bore quit. Thank you.
Okay.
Here's one for you though. If you could time travel, then it's logically possible. Well, it's logically impossible, because you could go back into the future and destroy the time machine.
You could go back into
the future. And if you could destroy the time machine, you could kill your grandfather if you went back into the future.
Okay, so you're going for the grandfather paradox. Well, you see, the thing is, there is actually a resolution to the grandfather paradox, yeah? in that all that would happen is another timeline would come along. Yeah, it wouldn't be upset by the fact that you then wouldn't come back and kill your grandfather, because by you coming back and killing your grandfather, then you change the timeline to a new tangent. So because you change one of the variables, you get a new outcome. Yeah. So there.
Your connection's gone, I think.
Has it? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It went for some reason.
All right, probably a lag spike. So what I was saying was that because you change one of the variables, a new outcome would arise, and therefore the old outcome wouldn't need to exist. So you wouldn't have to still be going back to kill your grandfather to gain that outcome anymore. But yes, there are some paradoxes with it. Time travel gets messy. There's nothing to say that you could travel back to the past, but there is something to say that you could travel to the future, because obviously you could do so, relatively speaking, because obviously you could accelerate to the speed of light to see, and by the time you reach that speed, you'd be moving at a relatively different rate of space-time that people on Earth would go through 70 years in the time that you've gone through 10, yeah?
Good.
So the thing is, you could travel into the future. You could literally, like for instance, you know how when you were a kid, you used to like do sleeps. You'd know if you went to bed early on Christmas and went to sleep, yeah? All you would know is that you laid down in bed and then you got straight back up again to go and open presents the very next day, yeah? So it's kind of like that. Essentially, time has elapsed, but the way you've perceived time is relatively different. And so it would be, you could travel to the future in that same sense. You get in a spacecraft, fly up, fly back down, you know, and in the time of like 5 minutes, you know, 100 years has gone past. Or if you found a planet close to a black hole or something of great density, like if there was a sun 20 times the size of ours, yeah, people on Pluto would actually see time slower than us. So we would go through 100 years in the time that they've only gone through 50 years.
But you can't know that. That's assuming that the laws of physics remain the way they are, and we can never know that the laws of physics will remain the way they are.
No, but you can only go, well, here's the thing, right? The laws of physics are supposed to be, a law is something that no matter how many times you repeat the experiment, you'll always get a thing. A rule is something which, you know, 60% of the time it works every time.
That's based on induction, which is affirming the consequence, isn't it? So it's, although it seems very fucking...
Well, no, a law is something, typically laws are actually axiomatic, because they're often based on mathematical principles.
Counterfactuals and stuff. But
here's the thing, right? If you could demonstrate something to be self-evident, yeah, then it essentially becomes axiomatic, yeah.
Some
like,
things
for instance,
like, for example, like if I say a square has 4 sides, that's
that's axiomatically
necessary.
so.
Yeah, there's no possible way that that could be false. But if I start talking about the law of gravity or something like that, that's based on what's happened in the past. It's got a degree of induction into it. But the problem with induction is that we cannot predict the future by what's happened in the past. Like, for example, if I give you an apple every day for 300 days or whatever, you might predict that I might give you an apple tomorrow. But I might not. I might give you an orange. There's no, do you see what I mean? It's something that we necessarily use.
I mean, induction has a problem by when it's an assumption, but induction when it's done by sort of stricter measures, yeah, where it is axiomatic. So if you're doing induction to the point of, for instance, a a proposition of, like, for instance, it's reasonable to assume that if you give me an apple every day for a whole year, that the next day you'll give me an apple, yeah?
Or
you know,
what if I say...
But if we go by some sort of empirical measures, when this is when we're talking about definitions, we're talking about things like the law of non-contradiction and the law of identity. Obviously, something is either A or not A, and so, for instance, when it comes to doing things like measurements, right? We know
what I'll say about logic.
A cubic meter of a cubic meter of air weighs 1 kilogram and takes so many joules to heat up from 0 to freezing, and it's all to do with like the law of thermodynamics.
Yeah, but that's assuming that the law of thermodynamics apply to every single day. Maybe tomorrow they won't apply. Maybe there's some unknown law.
Well, the thing. We have no way of... the law of physics is built on the principle that our universe is objective, yeah? So our universe works in a way regardless of whatever influence we try and put on it, yeah? Something will always accelerate towards the floor at 9 miles per second under Earth's gravity. Yeah, no matter how many times I try dropping that hammer and wishing it to drop faster, it won't drop any faster.
How do you know it won't drop any faster? Maybe there's some.
Do you think people can wish things into existence?
No, I don't think people can wish things into existence. I'm just saying.
Well, this is the thing that I'm saying. I can't. The laws of physics apply, yeah, to everything, regardless of whether we want them to or not.